Number 17 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Finance. Pursuant to the motion adopted in committee on December 16th, 2021, the committee's meeting to study the pre-budget consultations in advance of the 2022 budget. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of November 25th, 2021. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. So you're aware, the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. Today's meeting is also taking place in a webinar format. Webinars are for public committee meetings and are available only to members, their staff, and witnesses. Members enter immediately as active participants. All functionalities for active participants remain the same. Staff will be non-active participants and can therefore only view the meeting in gallery view. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind all participants to this meeting that screenshots or taking photos of your screen is not permitted. Given the ongoing pandemic situation and in light of the recommendations from health authorities, as well as the directive of the Board of Internal Economy on October 19, 2021, to remain healthy and safe, all those attending the meeting in person are to maintain a 2-meter physical distancing, must wear a non-medical mask when circulating in the room, and it is highly recommended that the mask be worn at all times, including when seated. Must maintain proper hand hygiene by using the provided hand sanitizer at the room entrance. As the chair, I will be enforcing these measures for the duration of the meeting, and I'll thank members in advance for their cooperation. To ensure an orderly meeting, I'd like to outline a few rules to follow. Members and witnesses may speak in the official language of their choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either floor, English, or French. If interpretation is lost, please inform me immediately, and we will ensure interpretation is properly restored before resuming the proceedings. The raise hand feature at the bottom of the screen can be used at any time if you wish to speak or alert the chair. For members participating in person, proceed as you usually would when the whole committee is meeting in person in a committee room. Keep in mind the Board of Internal Economy's guidelines to mask use and health protocols. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. If you're on the video conference, please click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself. Those in the room, your microphone will be controlled as normal by the proceedings of verification officer. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. When you're not speaking, your mic should be on mute. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. With regard to a speaking list, the committee clerk and I will do the very best we can to maintain a consolidated order of speaking for all members, whether they are participating virtually or in person. The committee agreed that during these hearings, the chair enforces the rule that the response by a witness to a question take no longer than the time taken to ask the question. That being said, I request that members and witnesses mutually treat each other with respect and decorum. If you think the witness has gone beyond the time, it's the member's prerogative to interrupt or to ask the next question and to be mindful of other members' time allocation during the meeting. I also request that members not go much over their allotted question time. Though we will not interrupt during the members' allotted time, I'd like to keep you informed that our clerk has 2 clocks to time them, our members and witnesses. I'd now like to welcome our witnesses. As an individual, we have Ian Lee, Associate Professor for the Sprott School of Business, Carleton University. From Campaign 2000, Leila Sarangai, National Director. From the Building Trades Unions, Mr. Sean Strickland, Executive Director. From the Canadians for Affordable Energy, Mr. Dan McTagg, President. From the Etobicoke Services for Seniors, Ms. Alison Koch, Chief Executive Officer. And from Festivals and Major Events Canada, Martin Roy, Executive Director. We're now going to hear opening statements from witnesses. Each of the witnesses, one per group, will have up to 5 minutes to make their opening remarks before we move to members' questions. And we're going to start right off the top with Mr. Ian Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and the committee for inviting me. In 1953, the year I was born, Sir Isaiah Berlin, the great Oxford philosopher, wrote a remarkable book, in part, about animals. Berlin stated there's 2 kinds of thinkers in this world, the hedgehog and the fox. Hedgehogs view the world through the lens of a single defining idea. And he gave his examples Plato, Hegel, Nietzsche, Proust. By contrast, foxes draw on a wide variety of experiences, for example, Shakespeare. Today, I'm speaking to this committee as a hedgehog. One more quote. The great General Napoleon Bonaparte stated that generals often prepare for and fight the last war, not the next war. So what was the last war in our time? From the early 70s, when I entered the workforce in Canada, until very recently, Canada confronted relatively high unemployment caused by the entry of millions and millions of boomers, coupled with significant levels of immigration, which many Canadians, I'm one of them, strongly support. Consequently, for the past 50 years, 1972 to 2022, every prime minister, every finance minister, premier, MP, social activist, scholar, think tank, focused on issues surrounding unemployment, income support, worker retraining, and even suggestions for a guaranteed annual income. While federal and provincial governments understandably spent hundreds of billions of dollars over the past 50 years to address these urgent social problems. Then COVID wandered into the nation's homes and businesses, and in one of the numerous paradoxes engendered by the COVID pandemic, it caused temporary, as we very quickly learned, high unemployment, followed very shortly by very strong, robust economic rebound, and specifically mentioned several times by Minister Freeland in the April 21 budget speech. The very sharp economic snapback exposed the desperate underlying labor shortages that are now the new pandemic in Canada and Western countries. Some MPs may already dismiss what I'm saying. Not so fast. I urge every MP to read the magnificent evidence-based book by Globe and Mail journalists John Ibbotson and Daryl Bricker, CEO Ipso Reid, called Empty Planet. Over the last 20 years or so, as we became ever more concerned with global warming, there's been increasingly loud complaints by environmentalists and activists that the planet is skyrocketing towards 10 billion. Some claim 11 or 12 billion people. Yet in Ibbotson and Bricker's own words, a growing number of experts are sounding a very different alarm. Rather than continuing to increase exponentially, the global population is headed for a steep decline. And in many countries, that decline has already begun, end quote. These professional demographers, statisticians, mathematicians, and leading research universities, not activist lobbyists, show that in almost every country in the world, and most certainly in Canada and the Western countries, we are going to witness population collapse to 5 billion people on Earth. In plain English, this means about 2.7 billion will vanish from the current 7.7 billion people on Earth over the next 50 or 60 years. The New York Times has regularly documented population decline, for example, in Japan, which is requiring the razing of homes, the destruction of homes due to the lack of younger buyers. Yet, most MPs, government policymakers, and cabinet ministers advocate policies of yet more and more and more income support, as if this is 1972 all over again. What is needed is a complete change in what Max Weber called the Weltanschauung, or world view. As I'm just wrapping up now, as former Liberal Deputy Prime Minister Anne McClellan stated only yesterday in the Globe and Mail, I'm not one of those who says, let's not worry about the deficit and debt. You absolutely have to. And you have to worry about productivity, and you have to worry about investment. I want to see a growth narrative in the 2022 budget. What is the narrative to get us to 2030 and net zero emissions in 2050, end quote. It is urgent that Budget 2022 pivot away from policies that unwittingly incentivize people to remain out of the workforce. For example, COVID supports without conditions to require recipients to seek and accept job offers, or policies that incentivize early retirement before the age of 67, strongly advocated by the OECD. Indeed, the government of Canada needs to announce a root and branch exercise to review all social policies across the government with the objective of identifying policies that incentivize people to remain outside the workforce or retire from the workforce before 67, as recommended by OECD. In the words of Minister Freeland in Budget 2021, we are all in this together. Members of Parliament, it's now time to leave the 20th century battles behind and start fighting the next war, which has already arrived, of massive labor shortages in Canada. Why? Because in the words, to paraphrase Prime Minister Trudeau, because it is 2022. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lee. And now we're moving to Campaign 2000 and Ms. Sarangai.
Thank you very much. Hello, and thank you for inviting me to appear today. My name is Leila Sarangi, and I'm the National Director for Campaign 2000, which is a coalition of over 120 organizations working to end child and family poverty. Today, I'll be highlighting several recommendations we've made in our Budget 2022 submission and our latest child poverty report card, which found that more than 1.3 million children continue to live in poverty. That's nearly 1 in 5 kids, but the rates are much higher for Indigenous children, racialized immigrant, children with disabilities, children in lone mother-led families, among others marginalized by systemic barriers. These families are living in deeper poverty and inequalities are growing. While the national rate of child poverty reduced slightly in the last year, when we looked by province and territory, we found that it actually increased in several of those sub-jurisdictions. Today, I'm going to focus on 2 areas, income benefits and childcare, although we address many other essential areas in those documents. The first is the need to budget for a full CERB amnesty. Funds that have been earmarked in the fiscal update to repay seniors who lost GIS, they must be released now. We've been hearing from seniors who've lost their housing, who are living in their cars, who can't afford their food and their medications. Many have contemplated suicide because of this hardship, and too many have already lost their lives. We implore you on their behalf to pay an emergency $2,500 to those seniors now and to create a new $100 million housing fund to help keep all clawback victims housed. The CERB has interacted with other federal and provincial benefits. So in addition to losing GIS, people with low and moderate incomes have lost child benefits, workers' benefits, GST credits, social and disability assistance, housing supplements, and other provincial benefits such as those for energy and childcare costs, which they depend on to get through these extraordinarily difficult times. A full CERB amnesty would mean that all clawed back benefits would be returned, and it would mean to stop pursuing low and moderate income individuals for repayments of pandemic benefits. It would ensure that the pandemic benefits would not negatively interact with income benefits in this or in future tax years. And it would immediately increase the current lockdown benefit to $500 a week and maintain that amount until EI is reformed. We also recommend using the Canada Social Transfer to ensure adequacy of income programs by increasing investment by $4 billion and tying funds to adequacy standards, making sure that provincial and territorial programs are meeting human rights obligations. Our last 2 annual report cards have found that the Canada Child Benefit is losing its power. It needs significantly more investment into the base amount so that it can reach those children who are left in deep poverty. Repealing the section of the Income Tax Act that ties eligibility to immigration status will enable access to people with precarious immigration status who have precarious immigration status but are considered residents under the Income Tax Act. And we support the recommendation of disability communities to speed up the design and implementation of the new federal disability benefit, and we recommend a federal disability benefit for children as well. While the tax system is broad and ongoing activities to bring more people into it are important poverty reduction initiatives, it will never be a universal system. We need a parallel benefit distribution system that is federally funded and works with local charities and communities to get benefits to people who are outside of the tax system. This kind of work is already happening informally across the country, and there are jurisdictions that have formalized programs across the world that we can learn from. And lastly, on childcare, a national system has the power to be transformational if designed with low-income families in mind. Our recommendation is a sliding scale $0 to $10 a day model that reduces fees through funding of operational costs, not through an individual parental fee subsidy model, which we know from experience doesn't hasn't worked for families and doesn't actually reduce fees. Operational funding must also factor in decent wages for staff. Provincial and territorial wage grids will be an essential piece of that funding policy. Thank you for your time today, and I look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Sarangi. And now we're moving to the Canada's Building Trades Unions and Mr. Sean Strickland for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's a real pleasure to be here, and thanks to you and the committee for allowing us to present today. My name is Sean Strickland. I'm the Executive Director of Canada's Building Trades Unions, part of North America's Building Trades Unions. We represent 14 international construction unions with a combined membership of over 3 million unionized construction workers, of which 600,000 are in Canada. The women and men of the building trades are employed constructing everything from small projects through to large multi-billion-dollar projects across Canada. The construction and maintenance sector annually represents approximately 6% of Canada's GDP. Skilled trades workers are often later employed in the operation, renovation, maintenance, and repurposing of plants, factories, and facilities. Our members and contractors build it and maintain it. We recommend that Budget 2022 consider the following. 1, maintaining investments in infrastructure that provide good middle-class jobs and removing the clutter that currently exists between federal, provincial, and municipalities to make sure the money for infrastructure projects flows more smoothly and quickly. 2, applying community benefits agreements and federal infrastructure projects that provide opportunities for underrepresented groups and apprentices. Community benefits agreements must be included in all federally procured construction contracts. We need to do better than provide aspirational goals for the industry in order for us to provide more opportunities for more people. 3, ensuring a just transition for energy workers along Canada's path to net zero. We all know that there will be much job loss on the path to net zero, especially for Canada's energy workers. We need to make sure that the right kind of supports and training opportunities are available so workers can position themselves for the new energy supplies of the future. More details of each of these will be contained in our formal submission. There is, however, one simple, long overdue, critically important issue that must be included in the 2022 budget: a skilled trades workforce mobility tax deduction. This deduction will end the inequity in the Income Tax Act that currently treats skilled trades workers unfairly compared to salespeople and professionals in other industries who can receive a tax deduction for their work-related travel costs. Also, encourage labor mobility for building trades members and all construction workers who, unlike workers in other occupations, are often required to travel for work. Also, potentially save the government an estimated $347 million a year based on independent analysis that has been shared with several members of this committee and the government. The construction industry is cyclical. Projects are developed, are built, and completed in different locations at different times, requiring a mobile, skilled trades workforce to travel to where the work is. When expenses aren't covered by an employer, workers often have to pay out of pocket for travel expenses, costs that can run into the thousands. When trying to support a family, the extra expenses make it too expensive to travel for work, thus creating a barrier to labor mobility, unbalanced labor markets, where often in Canada we have a surplus of construction labor in some areas, while at the same time shortages in others. Currently, the Income Tax Act treats skilled trades workers unfairly. Other professionals can receive a tax deduction for the cost of their travel, meals, and accommodations when not covered by an employer. The same option is denied to skilled trades workers. For example, someone selling rebar or conduit for the construction of a new building can travel and deduct the cost of their travel, meals, etc. from their income, while the same option is unjustly denied to the skilled trades workers who have to travel the same or greater distance, incur similar costs, who actually install the rebar and conduit. Clearly, this is unfair. Workers in the skilled trades will always have to travel for work. That's why our members are called journey people. The tax system shouldn't punish construction workers for their profession. CB2U and our 600,000 working men and women are buoyed and appreciative of this issue being included in both the Liberal and Conservative Party platforms and the ongoing support of the NDP on this issue over the years. We are very hopeful that the inclusion of a tax credit in the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Labour's recent mandate letters will finally get this done, with one small change. Construction workers need a tax deduction not a tax credit. Why? The maximum credit of $600 will not provide enough of an incentive for workers to be more mobile. Depending on your total income, a tax deduction could provide tax savings of up to $2,000 or more, which will make it more attractive for a worker to travel to work. A deduction, not a credit, will level the playing field between construction workers and other workers. It would also save the government money. The CBTU commissioned an independent study that estimated a skilled trades workforce mobility tax deduction could reduce reliance on employment insurance, increase government revenue to the tune of $347 million annually. This is a simple and long overdue change to the Income Tax Act. It is in the best interest of the government, this Parliament, and all parties to support the inclusion of a skilled trades workforce mobility tax deduction in the 2022 budget to redress a current inequity in the Income Tax Act, provide reasonable incentives to improve labor mobility, and help rebalance construction labor markets and remove barriers for construction workers to travel, get to work, and continue to build Canada. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Mr. Strickland. And now we're moving to the Canadians for Affordable Energy, Mr. Dan McTague, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Fonseca, Chair, members and guests, witnesses, it's a pleasure to be here. Mr. Fonseca, good to see you again. I know it's been a number of years since we last commiserated, and a lot of water has gone under the bridge since that time. Canadians for Affordable Energy is really the brainchild of the work I have done over the years on energy, not just in my previous jobs with Gas Buddy or tomorrowsgaspriceday.com, but also, of course, as a member of Parliament, where I led a number of initiatives dealing with the cost of energy and its implications on Canadians and the finances that affect everyone, whether that happens to be those on fixed incomes or that happens to be those in the business sector, or that happens to be those students who are making their way into a future most uncertain. Part of my message in being here today is really not one of providing, a guidance as to how the government should deliberate in terms of its expenditures, but perhaps borrowing from the past in terms of where I think the governments may want to consider moving. And that's considering the dramatic, significant increase in energy prices. And here I'm not only talking about gasoline or diesel prices, which are now at all-time records, but of course, utility costs, the ability for people to make ends meet in a cold winter, an unusually cold winter, perhaps a sign of things to come, where we are seeing many people have to reach much deeper in their pockets to whether to be heat by propane, whether heat by furnace fuel, stove oil. What we're seeing right across Canada is an unusual, perhaps not unexceptional, given what we're seeing in Europe today, but certainly unusual spike in prices. And if I go back just to the beginning of this year, Mr. Chairman, the increase in energy prices now works out to about 14%. If one looks at, for instance, diesel prices, which also are a barometer for heating fuels, natural gas, on markets, we're looking at an increase which began at the beginning of the year at about $1.35 on average in Canada, now pushing well towards $1.65. Ditto for gasoline at a time in which we're trying to come out of COVID recovery. I think it's not lost on most of you as representatives that you are getting some calls on this. But I would expect that there are some solutions. And that, very briefly, because I don't want to take up the 5 minutes, I do want to hear from other witnesses as well as some of your questions. One of the tried and true has been to provide a rebate for Canadians. And that is not a unique thought. We did it twice as Liberals in 2000 and 2002 in the terms of an energy rebate. And that is basically derived from the fact that as these prices go much higher and are likely to remain high, not just because of carbon taxes, but because of the dynamics in the market in which there is obviously a global shortage of oil and other important hydrocarbons, we're likely to see a scenario where federal and provincial governments through GST, HST are going to be in receipt of a substantial windfall. And I would think that perhaps it might be best for governments to really strongly consider remitting some of that in the form of a GST rebate or other means. I realize, of course, as well, government's finances are not exactly great emerging from pre-pandemic expenditures and pandemic expenditures. But as far as in providing impetus to the growth and to allow for an orderly extension from the COVID period, I think such an initiative would certainly be in order. I also believe that governments may want to consider collectively for now what many other nations are looking at, and that is a moratorium on any future taxes on energy, whether that be electricity, whether that be natural gas, propane, diesel, or gasoline. That would inevitably mean, and I'm, of course, making a big request here because I know it runs counter to the narrative, but I think, would need to look at a moratorium as well on carbon taxes. If we don't do that, and if we think we can rely on the idea that rebates will take care of it, I'm concerned about the inflationary effect this has and the secondary consequential effects this has. Whether you speak to farmers or those in the energy sector of all at all sides, you're looking at most admitting that the price and the cost of living is becoming for many unattainable. And I think we all can agree, politics aside, that once you start messing around with the price of food, you have a much more serious problem on your hands. So I would suggest, very humbly, but very directly, that one of the solutions to a very complex problem, and I admit that, would be to look at a moratorium on carbon taxes for now, an increase on carbon taxes, as well as rebates to help Canadians defend themselves in a period, in an era where we are going to see inflation pretty much destroy the purchasing power of many. I don't need to mention the fact that the weakness in the Canadian dollar at a time of high energy prices is something we have not witnessed in many years. In fact, in 2014, when we saw oil pushing at $90 a barrel, the Canadian dollar traded within about 5 to 8% of the U.S. greenback. Important because we price all of our commodities in U.S. terms. The fact that it takes now 127 pennies adds significantly to the cost of living for everybody, and is perhaps a hidden inflationary effect that I'm not sure statisticians are picking up when it comes to telling us what the inflation rates will be. I'll leave that to the brighter folks out there, but in the meantime, the two recommendations are ones that we believe would do well and prevent and lessen injury to the Canadian economy and to your constituents. I look forward to your questions en français et en anglais.
Thank you, Mr. McTagg. And now we're moving to the Etobicoke Services for Seniors, and we have Ms. Allison Koch, Chief Executive Officer, for 5 minutes.
Sorry. I want to thank you for the privilege of speaking to this committee and use this opportunity to provide insights into the roles that home and community care agencies like the one I represent do. Etobicoke Services for Seniors, like so many other home and community care agencies, supports seniors, adults with disabilities, and their caregivers. I have learned from both personal and professional experience that what agencies like mine do is not well understood. Too often, only when families are in crisis do they seek our support. Had they been aware of our purpose and the kinds of programs and services we offer, so much human suffering and economic cost to our health and long-term care system could have been avoided. For these reasons, I'm asking this committee to support a public education campaign to raise the awareness of all Canadians about the home and community care sector, specifically what we do and why we do it, that we are out there with the specific goal of helping seniors, adults with disabilities, and their caregivers live as well as possible for as long as possible and as independently as possible in their own homes and communities. The many services we provide, such as adult day programs, transportation, overnight and in-home respite care, assisted living support, and health and wellness, are aimed at achieving three outcomes: to provide information and knowledge, to combat isolation, and build networks, connections, and communities. Many folks thrive through their golden years, but as time passes, each of us will experience losses. While this is no surprise in the abstract, the experience is far from academic. With age, the risk of economic insecurity, the risk of failing health, of declining physical and cognitive capacity, and above all, the risk of loneliness all rise.
Well, have you concluded, Ms. Koch?
No, I'm just sorry to find my way. Okay. Home and community care agencies understand these risks and in partnership with clients, implement programs to address them. To build The relationships we build with our clients often spans decades, sometimes 30 years. They grow old with us. The first contact may be through fitness and wellness check-in calls, but by intentionally staying in touch with clients and their caregivers, we learn of their changing needs and circumstances. Do they need transportation to the barber or to a doctor appointment? Would they benefit from gathering socially for meals or recreational events? Could their personal health situation mean that they need in-home or 24/7 respite care or adult day programming? Many Canadians simply do not know about the home and community care sector and that these kinds of services are what we provide. Because of this, when such supports are needed, they don't know who to turn to or how to access them. There is a real need to fill this knowledge gap, and a campaign to raise awareness about what home and community care agencies do and how to access them would help so many in three main ways. Canadians need to know we are there to provide information and knowledge. I suspect that many of you have or are now supporting aging relatives. When I experienced this with my own parents, I had no idea what they were going through. More troubling, I had no idea where to turn to help. The system was fragmented with, as the baseball saying goes, no one seemingly on first. I know that many, many people are now or have had this same experience. For example, recently I received a call from a person with a long history of activism on behalf of seniors. She was anxious because her doctor advised her that she would be discharged almost immediately after an upcoming operation. While very capable, she lived alone and she knew she would not be able to take care of herself after the surgery. I told her about our 24/7 caring center where she would have a private room, all her meals, assistance with showering and dressing, and staff happy to sit down, enjoy a cup of tea, or to simply chat. If this truly well-informed person did not know about this service, what are the chances that so many others with less connection because of language and other barriers would know that such help is available? Many of you with seniors in your lives are in the same boat. You need to know where to get help for your loved ones. Just when you need it most, where do you start? People need to know that this kind of help is available before they're facing a crisis. Providing this information is a key role that home and community care providers provide. 2, we are there to combat social isolation that so many seniors, adults with disabilities, and their caregivers experience. At the best of times, aging can be very isolating. COVID raised this to a whole new level. One example of how our agency met this challenge was by launching a food security program. As soon as the pandemic was announced, all our group programs were suspended, and all the staff involved in these programs shifted to a new mode of operation. Every single one of our clients got calls every week. Again and again and again, we heard how difficult it was for folks to access food and essentials. In the first few weeks, conversations were short. We're fine. But over time, they got longer. Fear of taking public transit and their physical frailty, prohibiting them from carrying heavy grocery bags any distance, were among the barriers they faced. As more and more closures occurred, the demand for rides in our vehicles declined. We had vehicles and staff available as never before. So what we did was we launched a grocery program, asking our clients and caregivers to call us with their lists. We placed their orders with no frill partner, we packed the bags, and our staff picked up and delivered these groceries to their doorsteps. Today, we have completed over 1,500 grocery deliveries. Because we knew that food insecurity challenges extended well beyond our client base into the community at large, ESS teamed up with others to meet this need. Unprecedented interagency collaboration occurred. For example, through a partnership with Toronto Community Housing, we helped deliver prepared meals and food hampers.
Thank you, Ms. Koch. Thank you. That was great. You're going to have a lot of opportunity during question time to elaborate on many of those programs. Thank you so much. We are going to move to Festivals and Major Events Canada, and we have Mr. Martin Roy up for 5 minutes.
Oui, bonjour.
Yes, good morning, everyone. FAME and REMI represent over 500 festivals and events in Canada. We were very happy with the 2021 budget. We thought then that the COVID-19 nightmare was just about over and that financial assistance would repair the damage that had been done. However, 1 year later, we're still here asking you to intervene. The Major Festivals and Events Support Initiative, this new program of up to $200 million managed by regional economic development agencies, is not delivering on all of its promises. The main problem is that this program took more than 6 months to receive its first files and gave the first responses to festivals and events 8 months after the budget. Consequently, this 2-year program has effectively become a 1-year program and covers only one edition of festivals, that of 2022. We missed the 2021 edition. I therefore implore you to extend the end of the program from 31st of March 2023 to 31st of March 2024 so that it can cover the summer of 2023 and a second edition of festivals. The other problem we see is that this program is too restrictive. By choosing to limit access to festivals with annual revenues of more than $10 million, the government has restricted access to 25 Canadian festivals taking place in 3 or 4 provinces. This choice has also led to a huge imbalance between support provided to major events through the Major Festivals and Events Support Initiatives and all other festivals, those that have revenues of less than $10 million a year. There are about 1,000 of them that are supported by Canadian Heritage, and together they can count on much less than $200 million in total. The fact that the $200 million announced for local festivals is also used for community cultural events and organizations such as outdoor theater, heritage festivals, local museums and amateur sporting events, and much more, according to the budget itself. So consequently, there's little left for festivals and events relative to their needs, relative to the scale of disaster in our sector, and to their number. To distribute the money in the budget, Canadian Heritage chose to set up a recovery fund and a reopening fund. 10 months after the budget, the reopening fund associated with the Canada Arts Presentation Fund is not accessible. Here we're talking about $25 million. Festivals still have no idea of what they'll be able to submit, or even when, 4 or 5 months before the beginning of the season, almost a year after the budget. So it seems like they will at best have the answers just before their event, if not during or even after the way things are going. This is not acceptable. Last year, your committee called for support for the cultural, tourism, and hospitality sectors by providing additional financial support for these revenues until the COVID-19 restriction could be safely lifted. We're counting on this. Everything needs to be extended with prorated envelopes and adjustments. This includes the Reopening Fund and the Heritage Recovery Fund, the support initiative I mentioned, and of course the measures included in Bill C2. We believe that if the support initiative for major festivals and events is extended, we could also do the same. That is, add $100 million to the $200 million while extending it to include not 25, but several dozen smaller events during the 3rd year of the program. Last July, I sent your committee recommendations on the normal situation or normalizing of the sector in a brief, because at that time we were considering returning to normal. I'll give you some details about this later. In general, outside of COVID, it must be said things are not going any better. We have members who are receiving less today than in 2018, while the government has reinvested 25% to 40% in 2019 in the 2 programs for festivals. So I also insist on the need to create a complementary program on the side of economic development and the agencies of economic development, which will support festivals and events by virtue of their contribution to tourism and the economy, especially for festivals and events that are not cultural and are not supported by Canadian Heritage. We should devote $25 million a year for them. There's a large category of festivals that are not supported at this time, and they're very vulnerable because of COVID. There are our friends at the Canadian Association of Fairs and Exhibition, CAFE, who also support our request. Thank you.
And all witnesses for your opening remarks. We are moving now to our first round of questions by members. The first round is the 6-minute round. That means each party will have up to 6 minutes to ask their questions of witnesses. And we're starting off with the Conservatives, and Mr. Chambers is up.
Thank you much, Mr. Chair. Nice to see everyone here today. Thank you so much for taking time out of your days to spend with us here at committee as we think about recommendations for this year's budget. Professor Lee, thank you for your opening comments. Our government points to some strong economic growth that we've seen in the second half of this year, frequently reminds us that we've recovered most of, if not all of the jobs that were lost at the beginning of the pandemic. The Bank of Canada has a growth outlook in 2022 and 2023 that is reasonable, and it says we're operating near capacity. What you've seen from the current government in past budgets and what we know is to come with another $100 billion in additional deficit spending, would you say we're on the right path economically?
Mr. Lee, you're on mute. Thank you.
I should know better. I've been teaching for 2 years on Zoom. I should know better. Sorry. I'll be brief. I thought that the policies of the government providing income support from the beginning of COVID, March 2020, were completely appropriate. We were in this massive crisis. We didn't know where it was going. We didn't know how lethal it was, and so forth. We all know the story. However, since then, I mean, everything is dynamic. Economies are dynamic. The facts are dynamic. As the PBO director, the nonpartisan director, PBO report said only 5 or 6 or 7 days ago, there's no further justification. And we've got to pivot because I know I'm sounding like the hedgehog of only one big idea that the world's depopulating, but the data is overwhelming. We have almost 1 million job shortages. And let's be clear what that means. There aren't enough people in long-term care homes to look after, older people like me one day if I get there. Okay, we have shortages. And yet, and I say this with the greatest respect to MPs because I think it's an incredibly challenging job, but we have to pivot. It's not I know 1972. I joined the workforce in 1972, and it is not 1972. It's not 1982. It's not 1992. We have massive job shortages, and we're only at the beginning. We're not at the end. We're looking at 30, 40, 50 years. Every serious demographic forecast by serious demographers and top-notch research universities, these shortages are only going to get worse and worse. And we all say, oh, well, we'll solve it with immigration. When other countries wake up and start to realize they've got the same crisis, I think you're going to see countries restrict in the authoritarian, totalitarian countries. They're going to stop and prevent people from leaving their countries to go off to Canada so we can solve our job shortage problem. And so I'm saying we've got to pivot. And so we've got to adopt, as Deputy Premier, former Deputy Prime Minister McClellan said, we got to not only have a growth agenda, we've got to focus on, I think, all hands on deck. We got to get everybody into the workforce that we possibly can. And I hope you look at the OECD recommendations they've been recommending for years. They said we're living longer and longer and longer, and yet we have policies of retirement as if it's back when life expectancy was 60 or 65. But it's not. It's in the 80s, and it's increasing. So we've got to look at our retirement, minimum age of retirement policies. We've got to look at making sure every income support program, of course, support people that need help, but tie it to a requirement that they must be seeking employment. We need all hands on deck in this economy.
Thank you very much, Professor Lee. You mentioned about the need to spend in the pandemic at the beginning, and I think you've also talked about the narrative or the justification for some of the spending that we saw. Of course, there were individuals devastated, parts of the economy unable to, survive, provide for their family. But isn't it also true through some of the StatsCan's data that we've seen that, we spent a lot more than we needed to in terms of a targeted approach. We actually spent much more broadly than we needed to help people through the pandemic.
That's the position I've said publicly in my various media interviews, and I have looked at the data very closely. Just very quickly, the OECD, which is absolutely top-notch and impartial, showed that only 2 countries, it was remarkable when you look at the data, and the PBO reproduced this data, I believe, or else it was Bank of Canada in their NPR report. Only 2 countries in the West saw GDP go down and income went up. One was Canada, the other was the US. Normally, when you have a GDP, an economic collapse, GDP goes down, national income goes down. We had this remarkable, I've never seen it in my lifetime, ever studying economic data. GDP collapsed because we shut down the economy. Incomes went vertically north. GDP went south, incomes went north. If you look at Germany, not a shabby country, very progressive country. You look at Sweden, you look at France, you look at UK, GDP and incomes went down, and they were pumping lots of support into the economy. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that, of course, we needed to support people, but I think we supported companies and people that didn't need support, and when we could have gone on a far more targeted approach to target the most vulnerable members of society, as opposed to people in the middle class or upper middle class.
Thank you very much. So just quickly, my last 10 seconds. Is now the time for new government spending?
I don't believe so. No, I don't believe so.
Thank you very much.
The income support is no longer needed.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chambers. We are moving now to the Liberals and Mr. Baker for 6 minutes.
Thanks very much, and thank you to all our witnesses. And I'm going to direct my questions, unsurprisingly, I suspect, to many of my colleagues, to Alison Koch from Etobicoke Services for Seniors. Ms. Koch, first of all, I wanted to express my thanks to you for the important work that you do on behalf of seniors in our community in Etobicoke Centre and throughout Etobicoke and beyond. I have to tell you that when seniors or their children or their grandchildren reach out to me or my team about healthcare needs, very often, I think you probably know this, very often I rely on Etobicoke Services for Seniors to do all they can, and you and your team always do. So I don't know what we would do without you. So thank you for that service you're providing to seniors and others in our community. I know that you, during your presentation, you got cut off just because we ran out of time. Just wondering, before I go into my questions, was there anything else that you wanted to say or add that you didn't get a chance to say earlier?
Yes, thank you so much. I wanted to emphasize just the third point. And to be fair, I'm speaking for a community that doesn't necessarily have a strong voice. So I really don't want to lose the opportunity to talk about what else we do on their behalf. So the third thing that we do is build communities. Seniors and adults with disabilities are among the most marginalized members of our community for so many reasons: their age, cultural exclusion, poverty, and health circumstances. The best way to help them overcome these barriers is to support them in building relationships and making connections, such as we do with our caregiver support program, bringing people together who are caring for adults with Alzheimer's or dementia, giving them a chance to share their struggles and get ideas from others in similar circumstances. It brings them relief and a chance to make friends with others who truly get it. They are silently suffering out there. This is terribly important work. Another example of community development is our Daystrom program in North Etobicoke. Many people living in this area are newcomers, too often disconnected from services and supports because of language and culture. We hired a person with the ability to speak in their languages, and it is one of the happiest programs. I have to tell you, when I go to meet with these folks, they always blow me away. Even though English may not be their first language, it is clear from their faces how much they love just being together. And they have continued to meet virtually every week, something that we've made sure that they can do. So the best outcome is that they've stayed connected. With luck, we will all grow old. You and I are all traveling the same path. ESS mission and that of so many home and community care agencies is to keep folks on the path in their homes and communities, catch them if they falter or lose their way, and hold their hands through the process. However, as I stated at the outset, too few people know that such agencies exist and how we can help. Can you help raise their awareness of the home and community care sector? How can we help before they're in crisis? Increasing their chances of living healthier, longer, and more independent lives in their communities. Knowing where and how to access our supports the opportunity to reduce human and economic consequences of isolation and premature and unnecessary admission to acute and long-term care would be so much greater. I cannot think of a more valuable public service that you would be providing. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to speak to this issue.
Thank you very much, Ms. Koch. And I think we have about 2 minutes, just over 2 minutes left in my time. So I'll ask a couple of questions, if time permitting. You've advocated in your presentation for a public awareness campaign, which I think is a very pragmatic and thoughtful recommendation, one that allows people to navigate, to be aware of and then navigate and access the services that you provide that are also important. I think we would all agree with that. And you're not the only one doing this. There are agencies like yours across Canada that touch the ridings represented by the members here and others. If we were to do that, if seniors and their families were to become much more aware of the services that you and others provide, I suspect we'd have increased demand for the services that you and others provide. And are there adequate services available? Like, is there adequate funding out there? And I realize healthcare cuts across, is largely provincial jurisdiction, but is there enough funding out there to provide the services that we need to provide to seniors?
So I'm going to come at that two ways. I believe that we have the capacity to expand. And part of the reason I believe that is that there is an enormous number of volunteers who would be willing and happy to step up and support us. For example, I'm speaking to a men's group at church tonight with 100 people. They want to know how to volunteer. If they could come out and help us with our food security support or do wellness check-ins, I believe that there are people out there who truly understand how much need there is to serve seniors. And yes, what we would do is we would just have to be extremely creative about going for funding to help us target the needs that seniors have. We wouldn't have provided food security if we haven't gone after money for food security. We've got a food bank program going that we never had before. So I think there are opportunities to make the case, if only because the cost to the long-term care system and the acute care system of not doing so and the cost of human suffering just means that you have to do this work. I hope that answers your question.
It does, and I think I'm out of time. So thank you very much, Ms. Koch, for being here today.
Okay, pleasure.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Baker. And we're moving now to MP Sainte-Marie from the Bloc for 6 minutes.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to all the witnesses for your presentations. This is a very, very interesting panel. So I have questions for Mr. Roy. In your presentation, there was a lot of information, and I think that we'll be able to look at some of them in greater detail. But first of all, after 2 years of pandemic, the industry of festivals and events is in what shape in the field? Thank you, Mr. Sainte-Marie. So I'll give you some figures. In the first year of the pandemic, the income of the members of REMI in Quebec decreased by 68%. Our independent revenue, so ticket offices, food and drink sale, private sponsorships decreased by 89%. And we think that the grants, be they from Quebec, province, this territory, and federal, are really our lifeline. Because if there had not been any help, specifically, and horizontal help, such as the wage subsidy, some festival and events would be dead by now. So we're living in the hope of being to reinitiate our traditional modes of income. So we're waiting for clear signals from public health authorities. We know that in Ontario there's a quite specific calendar or schedule for coming out of lockdown, which is not the case for Quebec. Well, thank you. So 2 years without any independent income means that the industry is in danger of dying if there are no support measures. So you've said that there were huge delays in the support initiative. So you're recommending to extend the program's deadline to March 2024 so that it be a 3-year program rather than a 2-year program. Yes, it was a program that was supposed to be over 2 years, but it took almost a year to put it in place, 6 to 8 months before the first answers to requests were given. So, and we're asking to extend the length of the program by 1 year. And if it's possible to add resources and to extend it financially, also we're suggesting that that be done. That could also broaden access to the program and also considerably increase its impact. I've also noticed it said here as well that some people are asking to end wage or income support. And I have to insist that for culture and tourism, it's primordial to support those sectors and people who work in those sectors. I would say there's no magic wand that would allow us to transfer actors and into nurses and support workers. It can't be done by magic. So I insist that these measures are very important, and it's also important to keep that expertise in the sector of the performing arts, because once the pandemic is over, we will need to have resources, people who've been trained, people who know what they're doing, and that we can resume a normal cultural life in Canada. Yes, it's true. The entire cultural sector is a key industry. We must absolutely preserve that expertise. And we know that you are the first victims of the pandemic, the first to close down and the last to reopen for festivals, probably. And I'm really eager to see you come back to organizing events, holding events. So you've said that the support program is too restrictive, too limiting. It's only for festivals with $10 million and more, and also that for the small events it's too dilute for all cultural events and not just festivals. So can you remind us what you're suggesting that the committee do or consider? Well, when the budget was presented, we were told that there was help for major festival and other support at Heritage Canada for smaller festivals. At that time in the budget, the definition of a small festival and major festival had not been defined. So we were told that major festivals were those with annual income more than $10 million. So we had asked that that be much lower because, in actual fact, there are only 25 events in Canada with annual income of more than $10 million. You know them. They're the major festivals. But you know that on the side of smaller festivals, support is very diluted. So at Heritage, there's $200 million, but which is used for all sorts of things. And so there's a much smaller amount within that for festivals. And COVID is amplifying a problem in funding for festivals because even before COVID, there were problems. For 10 years, there was a freeze in support programs. There was no reinvestment. And there was reinvestment then in 2019 over 2 years. And then that was there was 1 year added at the fall economic update and then to the budget. But we would like those things to be made permanent. There's no reason to have to go for them for 1 year at a time. So we're asking the government to make this investment in the program of the Canadian Fund for Arts Presentations and the community program through Heritage Canada. Thank you.
Key for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much. Ms. Sarangi, you were speaking earlier about the seniors who've been affected by a clawback on their guaranteed income supplement of CERB benefits. And I know we're here to talk about pre-budget submissions, and the government talked about spending money in May or June of this year. But I know in your opening comments, you talked about how inadequate that was and the need for something to happen much sooner, a one-time payment to the seniors and perhaps also some assistance in some kind of housing fund to try and get those who've been evicted back in their homes. We've got a number of Liberal members on the committee. I'm just wondering if you could take a little bit of time to impress upon people why it's such a matter of urgency that the government act now as opposed to in May and June.
Through the chair, thank you so much for that question. We've actually been writing to all members of all elected members since the summertime when seniors first opened the GIS check or got a letter that surprised them to say you don't have GIS this year, or your GIS has been drastically reduced. So seniors have been going since June of last year without that supplemental income. And these are, as you all are well aware, the lowest income seniors, the most vulnerable in our communities, people who are over 65, who've worked hard their whole lives, who are still forced to work, even though they should be, retiring precarious, low-wage jobs where they're serving our coffee or giving us advice in the grocery stores or the home gardening stores. They didn't have an income supports to fall back on. Like they didn't have something in their bank accounts that they could fall back on. They have been trying to make ends meet since last summer. Over time, it is getting worse and worse. And for months now, I have been receiving calls and emails in desperation, people who have been evicted in the middle of this winter that we are having and living in their cars in the Northwest Territories. Somebody in Nova Scotia who sold her small business to try to get extra money and then was taxed and didn't end up with anything extra. People who have been sending me their doctor's prescriptions for their medication. They have $1,300 to live right now a month, and they've got these prescriptions and they can't afford their medications. Others who are emailing me to say, their neighbors, one's committed suicide, one lost their life because they couldn't access medication. Our partners who work in food banks are seeing people who they've never seen before, seniors moving in with their adult children, putting pressure on those families who are raising their own children. This is, and other legal clinic partners who are accompanying seniors in online rent tribunals where seniors are being evicted over Zoom calls. This is, it's devastating. It's devastating what is happening in our communities, and it's happening in your constituents, in your ridings across the country. It's such a deep issue and a small amount of the budget. If there was, an immediate emergency payment of $2,500 through in the same way that CERB was released quickly. I mean, these people are in the system. The money is earmarked. When they're calling me and asking me when is the money coming? Why hasn't it come yet? I don't have an answer because I really don't know.
Well, thank you very much for putting a human face on, what on Parliament Hill, I think too often is devolves into a conversation about figures and about bureaucratic processes. And I think what gets lost in there is the fact that there are people right now that are losing their lives or having their lives damaged irreparably because we're not providing assistance quickly enough. And it adds insult to injury to know that the government was aware of this problem at least as early as May of last year, which would have been enough time to do something about it, but that their position initially was that there was no reason to do anything. And it wasn't until well after the fall election that they got wise to the fact that this would have serious implications for people. And I'm certainly hopeful that we'll see action before the budget. So thank you for that. With whatever time I do have remaining, 1 minute. All right. Well, I'd like for you just to speak a little bit to, we've talked a lot with Campaign 2000, the NDP that is, about the need for a low-income CERB repayment amnesty. And it's something that we don't hear a lot about on Parliament Hill, except when the NDP is raising it. But I think, when we talk about the economic side of that, I just wonder if you could speak to how much, can government really expect to get back from folks who can't afford the debt burden that the government is putting on them? How much money do you think government could reasonably expect to recover from folks who already live below the poverty line and took the government at their word, applied for help when they needed it?
Nothing, pennies, maybe according, like in comparison to the amount that the federal budget is. I mean, we're talking about people who live on $700 a month if they're single, $1,300 a month if there's a couple. There is no extra $10 a month to make these kinds of repayments. The kind of hardship and stress that that puts on individuals and families, you know, to be saddled with $14,000 of federal debt for these families is very scary and puts a lot of unnecessary stress on families that are already struggling, you know, to make it through their days, to make sure their kids have something in their stomach before they go to school, to make sure that they can afford, you know, some new clothes or keep the lights on, keep the roof over their heads. So no, they're not going to make any money back.
Thank you, Ms. Rangi and MP Blakey. And we're moving members into round two. And so in this round, we have the Conservatives up first, and Mr. McLean for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, thank you, witnesses, for all the time and the input you're giving us here today on these important deliberations. My first questions are going to be to Dan McTeague at the Canadians for Affordable Energy. Mr. McTeague, you talked about proposing a rebate for Canadians, or a remit from their taxes on the increase in energy. And I'm a little confused with that, and I'd like you to explain it a little bit, please, because the way the government has actually sold their carbon tax to Canadians is that it already is a rebate to those Canadians that need it, a wealth redistribution mechanism, if you will. Can you comment on why we might need more of the same, if that's the actual proper way to do it, as opposed to just reduce the carbon tax?
Very good point, and thank you for the question, Ms. McLean. The carbon tax, of course, in many provinces, mine included here in Ontario, increased 10 cents a litre with HST in a period of 22 months, well beyond what would otherwise be, an inflationary factor. We also know that the increase in the price itself, more than carbon taxes, the actual increase in gasoline, diesel, and heating oil affecting many parts of the country, and natural gas as well. Fully about 3/4 of Canadians would be caught by this, including those on fixed incomes, have seen prices go on average in 2020 at this time of year, so back to the beginning of the pandemic, from about an average of 65-70 cents a litre diesel gasoline, then to $1.13 last year, and now $1.55, $1.60. In that period of time, beyond carbon taxes having that direct higher than inflation impact, you have a much higher price in which the federal and provincial governments take either 5% at the federal level or anywhere from 7 to 9%, depending on the province. The further east you go into Atlantic provinces. That's a windfall of money that I suspect is going to contribute to the hardship of Canadians as they are trying and struggling to get back on their feet. You don't have to take my word for it. With MNP debt solutions say that over 40% of Canadians are less than $200 away from calling it a day financially.
Thank you, Mr. McTeague. Let's move on. I hear what you're saying there, and I agree. The whole issue of the carbon tax, when we applied it at a $60 barrel of oil, it more or less was the equivalent of pushing it up to a $95 barrel of oil, and thus trying to equate the transition to other forms of energy and making those economic. However, now we've got $90 plus barrel of oil, and we're obviously going to be paying more for oil and the products that come from oil, in addition to the carbon tax. We've got an escalating tax on top of just our energy tax. But I'm glad you talked about the impact on the price of food, because that is fundamental here. If we're failing in our food production and our food provision to Canadians, we are failing very much as a nation. This tax, and particularly the Clean Fuel Standard tax, which is in addition to the carbon tax, are going to provide more of an inflationary effect upon the production of food. Can you comment on that somewhat?
Well, look, it's already a serious situation emerging on the food side with fertilizer is now being double the price, and that may not just be a question of scarcity. Your ureas, your nitrogens, both products derive from hydrocarbons. It looks like our farmers are scrambling for product and hoarding or keeping whatever they have. The hoarding would not be the right word. In this case, trying to protect what they have for this year's planting season. And that would mean, of course, inevitably higher prices for everything. As the carbon tax makes its way throughout the economy, much of it is not shielded. Much of it is widely compounding the cost of living well beyond the simple rebates that people receive. But when it comes to food, the totality of the increase in the price of that which we cannot take for granted is something that I think most of us have no argument with. And as you increase the cost of transportation, input costs for processors, input costs, whether it's over output based.
Thank you.
It's creating a problem.
Thanks, Mr. McTague. One more question here. The oil and gas companies across Canada have provided to Canadians excise taxes, sales taxes, income taxes, municipal taxes, royalties totaling over $500 billion to Canadian treasuries over the past 20 years. In your mind, does this constitute a subsidy to the oil and gas industry?
Very short answer, Mr. McTague.
Questions often asked. It's not a subsidy. They pay far more than they could ever possibly receive, unless we're talking about a subsidy, which every single business in this country gets. I'm not a big fan of the oil companies. Took them on when I was an MP, but I never stood to try to kill that industry because I know how important it is for every social program in this country.
Thank you, Mr. McTague, and thank you, Mr. McLean. Okay, and we're moving to the Liberals. Madame Chatel for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for Mr. Lee. I'm very glad that he supports the independence and skill of the OECD. I was there for 4 years before the election. So the OECD agreed that it was important to take unprecedented action to preserve the workforce. But now we're moving towards building resilience in our workforce, and that's very key. They have 3 proposals. The first one is to help those in need while encouraging firms to move off subsidies and workers to shift to viable jobs. The second one is to ensure that firms use public support effectively to keep or create jobs, training, and retaining staff. Third is that the market labor, to make labor market resilient by investing in people, health, and environment. So my question to Mr. Lee, would you say that they're right in those 3 recommendations moving forward?
Thank you for the question. I've been using the OECD in my courses since I've been teaching 34 years ago. I want to be very clear. I've never advocated saying we shouldn't be spending on income support. I just looked up a number very quickly because I anticipated this question coming. This is StatsCan 2019, pre-COVID. That 3/5 of total federal, provincial, municipal spending went to social protection, healthcare, and education. So 3/5 is a huge amount of money. It's over $500 billion. That's pre-COVID. So I'm not suggesting we stop spending on income support or healthcare. We have a long history, as we all know, back to the 60s when we developed Medicare, CPP, and so forth. So that's not the issue. That's not the issue. We say, oh, you're against, income support, or we've been doing it. And the unemployment insurance program was passed in 1935. We all know that. What I am arguing is that we have to tie the support to which has been in the Unemployment Insurance Act from the very beginning of our country, with strong support by across the Canadian society that you have to be looking for a job, and you cannot turn down a job in your wheelhouse of experience or where you live. That's all I'm really saying, because we've got 1 million vacancies in Canada, and we can't build a strong economy if businesses don't have enough workers to function. So I'm in agreement with the abstract principles of the OECD.
I have 2 other questions for you. So thank you. I think that immigration is indeed very important. And we have, in refugees, for example, we have very talented workers there. So thank you. And the senior tax credit that is in the minute letter of the Minister of Finance for senior to remain on the workforce. I think what I've heard is that the more we do to maintain our senior in the workforce is something we also need to work. Just yes or no, if I understand correctly.
Absolutely. We've got to keep more people past 65 in the workforce. Absolutely.
Thank you.
If they're healthy and able.
Yes, thank you very much. I have a question for Mr. Strickland, if I have time, Mr. Chair. You have mentioned about the tax credit. Just a quick question. These are for employees, so I'm a bit surprised, again, why our employers do not support or cover those fees. Mr. Strickland.
Well, it is. Thanks for the question. It is for employees, and in some cases, employers do cover those costs, and that's largely on large multi-billion-dollar resource-based projects. But oftentimes, the nature of the construction business is that it's a low-margin, high-volume business, and it's very difficult for contractors in a competitive environment to absorb those additional costs and win a project. And so that's why it's important to put this tax deduction into place to encourage workers to go to where the work is.
Yeah, thank you. And if I have more
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Just to confirm, this is a real problem for rural areas because they're skilled workers that, you know, if they don't have the expenses to go in rural areas, then they might not go. Just confirm that it's particularly important in rural areas, Mr. Strickland?
Absolutely, 100%. It's important in rural areas, and it's important in urban areas. I can cite lots of examples within provinces, from rural to urban and across provinces, where the lack of this tax deduction proves to be a real barrier for worker mobility, and workers often will make the decision to stay at home and not go to work. If this deduction was in place, it would encourage them to go to where the work is.
Thank you. And thank you, MP Chatel. And we're moving to the block. MP Sainte-Marie for 2.5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you have told us that one of the problems is that when programs are voted, it's for 1 year or 2 years. This is for Mr. Roy. And it would be better that there be recurrent, predictable programs with increases linked to inflation. But in your presentation, you also said that there are funds that are voted, like the reopening fund that's been voted for, but the funds are no longer not yet accessible, and we don't know the criteria to obtain them. So I think there are 2 minutes. I'm listening. So I'd like to make a distinction between COVID programs and regular programs. The problem currently, in terms of the Major Festivals and Event Support Initiative, is that this was a one-time program for reopening of festivals and events, and we don't usually function in terms of years, but in terms of the edition or of the festival. So if it was created to support 2 editions, at this point it's only supporting 1 edition because it took 8 months to be put into place. For more regular traditional programs from Heritage Canada, it's not that these programs are not permanent, they are, but it's the reinvestment that are done repeatedly, and they're not insured beyond 2024 because it's done a year at a time. So that's the true program, which is the temporal aspect of this program. And you also talked about all festivals and events that are not of a cultural nature, that are not currently supported. Can you give us more information on that? So, yes, the problem at this point is it's a question of approach or philosophy at the federal government. It's considered that festivals and events are primarily cultural events. In many cases, they are, but it's not always the case. The common denominator is more economy and tourism, because if all events are not cultural, they're all related to tourism and economy. So in various jurisdictions, it's been understood. In Quebec, these programs are primarily supported by the Ministry of Tourism, but the Canadian government, they're primarily supported by Heritage Canada. So that leaves an entire category of festivals and events, be they sports events or festivals or entertainment, pure entertainment, or, for example, fireworks competitions. Yes, I've gone beyond my time. Well, thank you, Mr. Samari and Mr. Roy.
For 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Strickland. We've been talking a little bit about the proposal to ensure that tradespeople get fair treatment under tax law, like others who have the ability to make deductions or receive a tax credit when they move for employment. I think you mentioned in your opening remarks that's something that New Democrats have supported for a long time. In fact, in the last Parliament, Scott Duvall, who was then the MP for Hamilton Mountain, worked arm in arm with the building trades to prepare a private members bill that's subsequently been reintroduced by my colleague Matt Green from Hamilton. And I'm just wondering if you could take a moment, I know you did this a little bit, to just illustrate what the current provisions are for other types of workers and why it is that tradespeople, even though they may be employees, although sometimes they're independent contractors, should have that equal treatment in order to be able to go where the work is.
Well, thank you very much for the question, Mr. Blakey, and absolutely, we are appreciative of the longstanding support of the NDP for this issue. And for us, the inequity is quite simply, and the example that I provided in my opening remarks, I think is quite illustrative, is that, I live next door to someone, let's say for hypothetically, who is a salesperson there and is selling conduit. That's the kind of PVC material which you run wires through. You'd be familiar with that. And so my neighbor travels some distance to sell this conduit to a job site, and that person is able to deduct their travel, per kilometer, their meals if they have any, their overnight accommodation if required. And I am a tradesperson who installs the conduit. I have to travel the same distance as my neighbor who sells it, incur the same costs as my neighbor who sells it, but I'm not entitled to the same deductions under the Income Tax Act as the person who sells it. And so for us, we see that as an equity within the Tax Act, something that should be addressed. And if it is addressed, it will help encourage workers to go to work within provinces and across provinces where you have a shortage of work in one area and a surplus of work in another. So in Canada, we do not have a very mobile labor force. Construction, we do not have a very mobile labor force. But with this kind of encouragement through the Tax Act, we'll be able to provide opportunities for workers to go to where the work is, improve the productivity for Canada, reduce the reliance on temporary foreign workers in some cases, and bring our labor markets back into balance in some of these areas where they're out of balance.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. That's your time, Mr. Blakey. Thank you. And we're moving to the Conservatives. We've got Mr. Stewart for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My questions are for Ian Lee, Professor of Sprott School of Business. Professor Lee, thank you for taking the time to meet with the committee today. I've been looking forward to asking you questions all weekend. Is it true that you were trying to warn people that we should be watching for inflation at the same time government was worried about deflation?
Yes. I lived through it in the 70s. I lived through it in the 70s. And we experienced that throughout the 70s. And central banks and senior decision makers were saying, look, it's under control. It's under control. And in fact, wage and price controls were declared in 6 and 5 in 1974. And then when they were taken off, it kept ratcheting up. And we know where it ended. It ended, and I was the mortgage manager of the 4th largest branch of the Bank of Montreal in Canada, Ottawa main office. You, House of Commons, went and bought that building, by the way. It's now the Parliamentary Reception Centre. I worked there when rates were at 20%. And I'm not suggesting we're going to 20%. I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm just simply saying that when you let the genie out of the bottle, and I'm talking the inflation genie out of the bottle, it's very difficult to put the genie back in the bottle unless you take quite draconian measures. And that's not an opinion or a theory. We can look at the 70s and where it ended up in 1980. And it took interest rates of 20% with Paul Volcker. And it caused the worst recession in North America since the Depression. So yes, there are solutions to inflation, but they're very, very painful. And sometimes I think it's much better to be preemptive and say, don't let the genie out of the bottle, hit it before it's taken off, because if we postpone and kick it down the road, it will be worse. The solutions will become worse.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Can you please explain to the committee, I guess you've already explained how you saw it coming because you've experienced it in your lifetime. Were there certain market conditions that you've seen currently that drew the comparisons to your prior experience?
Well, I mean, what we saw in the 70s, and I don't want to get into that, who caused it, because I don't think that's fruitful. I don't believe Canada caused the inflation of the 70s, but I do believe, and there's many, I think, that believe that we exacerbated it. I don't believe that Canada caused it this time either, by the way. We know global supply chains being disrupted by the pandemic. But governments can contribute to inflation by pouring huge amounts of monetary stimulus and fiscal stimulus. I mean, Milton Friedman won, I know some people don't like him, but, he was an extraordinarily distinguished professor at the University of Chicago. He won a Nobel Prize for this very issue, showing that inflation has a huge, is hugely influenced by monetary and fiscal policy. And so throughout the 70s, we were pumping billions of deficit financing into the economy. Well, the economy was growing. I mean, I understand the argument. I'm a very Keynesian. When the economy collapses, goes over the cliff, you spend money. Sure. But we were spending money throughout the 70s when the economy was growing at 6 and 7 and 8%. Just like right now, we've got the economy growing stronger than before COVID, and we're pumping billions of dollars in. And we've recovered all the jobs. And that's why the PBO director said there's no economic reason now remaining to do the stimulus. So, I mean, I'm just being evidence-based on the data and the numbers that we can see and measure.
Appreciate these comments. So I guess, should we really be spending an additional $70 billion in regards to Bill C-8 with the new economic stimulus?
No, I'm very worried about it. And, I have no dog in this hunt, to use Bill Clinton's famous phrase. I don't belong to any political party. I don't consult anybody. Nobody can, I teach at Carleton. I do research. And so my point being that, and I'm very much following Anne McClelland. I thought her comments were absolutely spot on. We got to pivot now. Change. Okay, we did what needed to be done when COVID came along, but now we've got to focus on growth. We've got to generate growth, which will generate tax revenues to pay for these social programs, to pay for healthcare. We've got a lot of demands on our plate. We know that. There's people here advocating more spending. Okay, well, we need the growth to pay for it. And again, I just want to keep reminding everybody, people think, we can solve our shortage of workers with more immigrants. I think I strongly support immigration, but I think that we have to be prepared for the idea that immigration may start to slow down, and we need more workers. The million shortages is going to get worse post-COVID. It's not going to get better.
Ian,
thank you. And thank you, MP Stewart.
Okay,
that's
thank you.
That's your time. And we're moving to the Liberals and Ms. Zerowitz for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank all the witnesses for their excellent presentations today. I have questions for everyone, but I don't have enough time. So I'm going to start with Mr. Strickland. Mr. Strickland, thank you so much for being here today. Thanks for your excellent recommendations. I do have them in front of me. And thanks so much for your leadership within the building trades union and movement within our country. You've been an excellent leader, and I really appreciated all our previous conversations. The first question I have is not something you've mentioned, but it's something we've talked about. We have a number of non-status workers that are working in building trades union across the country. What do you think about, is it time for us to find a way to normalize the non-status workers that's been here for years, that have already been trained, that contribute to our economy already? What is your position?
Well, thank you very much for the question, MP Dershowitz. Absolutely, building trades support normalization of people who are working on our construction sites who aren't Canadian citizens. And I think we need to provide a pathway to Canadian citizenship. There's a pilot project that many of our affiliates have been working on through Department of Immigration, and that's had some really good results. We'd like to continue that work and provide pathways for more citizenship for workers on construction sites who can continue to provide good value to the Canadian economy.
And my next question is, part of the reason why we haven't had sort of enough skilled workers, in my opinion, come through our immigration system is because the language levels have been too high, as well as the education requirements have been kind of a disconnect with maybe requirements, maybe some of the skilled or semi-skilled workers we need. If we created some sort of a clear pathway where we adjusted those requirements for skilled and semi-skilled workers, do you think it'll help address some of the labor shortages within the construction or the building trade unions across the country?
Well, absolutely. It's a construction worker wouldn't qualify to immigrate to Canada right now under the current requirements for immigration. So that needs to change. Recognizing that we have shortages in some areas and pockets of high unemployment in others, we need to look at all kinds of different ways in order to get more people in the construction industry. We have to introduce it earlier in our grade schools. We have to provide mobility supports. We have to bring more immigrants into Canada. And we also have to provide pathways for those people who are already working in the construction industry. So it's got to be a multifaceted approach in order for us to continue to build this country.
And then my next question, and you're sort of touching a little bit into it, there's a lot of sort of red tape sometimes between the provinces in terms of the mobility of our workers. Is there any recommendation you have around maybe some interprovincial trade barriers that might come down, or harmonizing of some of the regulations that might actually facilitate the movement of workers across the country to where they need to go? Would you have a recommendation or two for that?
Well, there's been the interprovincial ministry objectives and work done on removing those kind of interprovincial trade barriers for recognition of different qualifications among tradespeople across provincial barriers. There's a Red Seal working group, which has all those ministerial folks on board that are looking at those kinds of issues. So I think more work needs to be done there. But we need more flexibility amongst provinces in order to recognize qualifications in one province versus qualifications in another. The Red Seal program helps with that. But overall, MPA, it's a great question. We need to have all these kinds of different tools to encourage this mobility. We've also looked at mobility, binational mobility, getting more workers from U.S. into Canada, more workers from Canada into the U.S. We've looked at recommendations around temporary foreign workers, where unions could be designated as potential employers so they could control and manage that temporary foreign worker program a little bit better than maybe private sector interests could. So there's a whole series of recommendations and initiatives, provincially, internationally, binationally, that could be done to improve the number of tradespeople within Canada.
And maybe just my last sort of 10 seconds that I have, if I could just ask you, Mr. Strickland, in terms of the top 2 or 3 sort of restrictions within Canada that you think we should be focused on beyond the red seals that you talked about, I'd be grateful if you could maybe send a recommendation over to our committee for our consideration.
I'd be happy to take a more comprehensive view of that, and we'll certainly send that along to the committee.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Thank you, MP Zerowitz. And we're moving members to round 3 of our questions. And we've got the Conservatives up first. And welcome to our committee, MP Lawrence. You're up for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, and it's an honor to obviously to ever appear at the Finance Committee. So I'm going to focus most of my questions on Mr. Lee here. So I just want to speak plainly about this and get his comments on some of the comments that I'm going to make. It's my belief that the more products we build, the more workers we have, the more services we deliver, the more prosperous we are as a nation. And you know what gets me excited? I certainly don't begrudge people who achieve financial freedom. That's great. But it's that economic growth, and that's what we call that. When we produce more products, we have more workers, that lifts millions of Canadians out of poverty. And so that's what gets me really excited. The challenge that I think we have is we're headed the opposite direction. I think we have a two-headed, or maybe, Mr. Lee, with a three-headed monster that the Canadian economy is facing right now. We have a deficit spending, which is leading, or at least in part, to inflation. Inflation means that for every dollar that someone earns, it's worth less. The other part is eventually that deficit spending has to be paid for. And at some point, you've got to pay the piper. And there's only two ways of doing that I'm aware of. And one is reducing spending, or you're increasing taxes. And what increasing taxes means that for all those workers who go out there every day, particularly those at the lower end of the economic spectrum, the less they get to keep. So they're going to get punished two ways with this continued reckless spending. One is every dollar they earn is going to be worth less, and then they're not even going to get to be able to keep as many of their dollars. And many experts have come before this very finance committee and said, you know what, when you add in the amount of clawbacks and withdrawals, in addition to the tax rates, people who are earning $50,000, $60,000 are actually facing effective tax rates of 40 or 50%. You add on to that inflation, it gets to a very scary place where we could see prolonged labor shortages and a lack of prosperity in Canada. Mr. Lee, would you comment on that? And if I'm incorrect, please correct me.
Sorry, Mr. Lee, you're on mute, Mr. Lee. Yep.
My apologies. I should know this. I use Zoom all the time. I'll be brief. The World Bank has done massive studies on this and poverty alleviation around the world. They have shown that competitive markets, productive markets, have removed over 1 billion people around the world, but I think it's 1.5 billion from the lowest levels of poverty. You look at the empirical evidence. There's no question that when you have a strong and vibrant economy, then it raises the standard of living for everyone, not just the people at the top. And so there's no doubt about that. I don't believe, and my views I don't think are any different from Don Drummond or David, the former governor of the Bank of Canada, and people, so-called blue liberals, if you want to call them that. Very quickly, to unpack one more point, I think it's very important, because you raised this point. Arthur Okun, the great liberal economist in the 60s, wrote a famous book called Equity versus Efficiency. And he said there's a constant balance in public policy in a mixed economy between, let's call it, policies of social justice versus policies of economic growth. And he said you got to strike the right balance. Because you need the growth to pay for the social justice policies. And I think that right now there's more of an imbalance. We focus so much on income redistribution, which is important. But at the same time, we've forgotten, or we're neglecting, and this is exactly what the former Liberal Deputy Prime Minister is saying, that we have not focused on policies of growth. We have domestic investment leaving our country.
All right, thank you very much. Just a little bit further on that train. So one of the other things that can actually happen as well is that if we go the other way, if we start declining in economic growth instead of growing the economy, is that actually when that growth reduces, it actually reduces the amount of income for the government, because obviously it's a tax base. That's right. That's called the Laffer curve there. I was just wondering if maybe you could give us 30 seconds on that as well.
Well, I won't even, I understand the Laffer curve is controversial. I won't even use the Laffer curve. Governments, federal, provincial, and municipal, share in the growth, because, I mean, you look at the revenues, the sensitivity in Western economies, and Canada's Exhibit A, that is to say, when the economy is growing, revenues gush. They just pour into the federal treasury, the provincial treasuries, and municipal governments. And then go look at the impact on the revenues flowing into governments when they fall off the cliff and they go into a recession. Their revenues just disappear. But governments are very sensitive to growth. The more governments grow, the more rapid the GDP growth rate in the economy, the more money flows into the treasury that can be then spent on healthcare, on social income support, and so forth. So there's anybody who believes in more social income support should be screamingly their support for economic growth because it generates more money to spend on those policies.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Thank you, MP Lawrence. And we are moving now to the Liberals and MP MacDonald for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to direct this to CBTU. And during the pandemic, global supply chains have caused inflation among many sectors and industries, including the Construction Association or Construction Group. Can you tell us now where those issues are in relation to cost and supply?
Yep, absolutely. Thanks for the question. It continues to be a challenge in terms of supply chain, continues to be a challenge in terms of the cost of raw materials. Also, the deliverability of goods is causing some delays on construction projects. And so it certainly is an issue for the industry and is having upward pressure on the final prices of construction projects.
Thank you. And just back to Ms. Zarowitz, a little bit on the labor force. I come from Prince Edward Island, and I just seen recently that our construction association's advertising 1,000 openings. And it's becoming very difficult, and it's contributing to all sorts of impediments. So I guess I want to ask her, more specifically to where she was coming from relative to K-12 and post-secondary and standardized education for the trades. Is it time that we standardize trades across the country in educational systems? Because there was a point in time when it was, in the 70s and 80s, supposedly, that it was the place to be. And then all of a sudden, everyone decided they wanted a business degree. Our economy changed. And now we're starting to see a real shortage in supply of that labor force.
Yeah, well, thanks for the question and great observation. A couple of comments I would make. So in Prince Edward Island, I know you have a residential kind of boom there happening right now, 1,000 workers required. Meanwhile, in Newfoundland and Labrador, we have surplus of workers. So this is exactly why a skilled trades workforce ability tax deduction will help, even in Atlantic Canada, for those workers in Newfoundland to potentially come to Prince Edward Island. Rather than sometimes getting on a plane and going much further afield. And so similarly in Halifax and Nova Scotia, there's requirements for workers, and there's a surplus of workers in Newfoundland. So that would really make sense to have that tax deduction in place to help with that. In terms of the standardization across the country, trades and trade regulation is in the purview of the provinces. We believe that there should be more standardization right across the country, as long as that standardization is rising to the top and not going to the bottom. So there is some pressure to try to de-skill the trades. We do not support that. If there's going to be any kind of standardization, it needs to be the higher level, not the lower level.
Yeah, interesting. Also, I know Prince Edward Island, they're even using virtual reality to get young people in exactly what it's like even before getting into the classroom and learning or the Red Seal programs. So it's interesting. But can you expand on the vast economic potential for jobs in your industry as a whole relative to the green economy? What potential do you see for the Construction Association could possibly be leading and hopefully leading the way relative to residential or business construction?
Well, thank you. And in terms of introducing young people to trades, you can also go to our website, and on there we have videos, and we're in conjunction with all provincial building trades affiliates right across the country, developing videos to help introduce younger people to the trades and help them understanding what a millwright does, for example, or an operator. So that's a really important piece of the work that we do. In terms of the economic opportunity, I mean, the challenge for us on just transition is, on one hand, you get a report saying we're going to lose 450,000 workers between now and 2050 in oil and gas. Then you get another report from Royal Bank saying that we're going to need $2 trillion in investment to build the energy sources of the future. So we're working to continue to provide those necessary jobs in oil and gas. and also positioning our workers for the new energy sources of the future: carbon sequestration, hydrogen, small modular reactors, nuclear. There is all kinds of opportunities in Canada for these new energy sources of the future. We need some support from industry and the government to make sure that our workers are there to do that. The Union Training Innovation Program is one program that's really helpful. There's sectoral initiatives that are coming out of the marketplace as well. And so we need those kind of supports to continue to position our workers to capitalize on this great opportunity that's ahead of us as we go to net zero.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Strickland. MP McDonald. And moving to the block, Monsieur Sainte-Marie for 2.5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur Fonseca.
Thank you, Mr. Fonseca. Mr. Roy, you gave us pre-budget submissions last summer, as you said. We suppose we were on our way out of the pandemic. Maybe you might come back to some things you were wanting to ask for at that time, or other things you'd like to of which you'd like to remind the committee. And so related to your preceding question, I wanted to say that we're still waiting for the monies that were announced in the budget nearly a year ago. So it's very important because if you make all these announcements and the money doesn't materialize, that's not very efficient. So I wanted to say in terms of getting back to normal in the sector, on one hand, you have to make the investment made in 2019 permanent that were extended bit by bit till 2024. We don't understand why these reinvestments that correspond to a greater need of the clients at Heritage Canada and that are ending 10 years of freezed support, why that has not been made permanent. So it's 8 million in the Canadian funds and 7 million in the community development through arts and heritage. So these funds till 2019 are not doing what's needed to solve a problem. So I think we have to re-inject 30 million, 20 million on the Canadian fund and 15 million in terms of community development so that the grants don't continue to decrease. So some festivals are receiving now less than before the reinvestment of funds by the federal government in 2019. So we're decreasing those the amounts. There's ultimately no increase in funding. That's because there are more clients at Canadian Heritage. The funds are distributed according to the number of requests and the amount available, which can lead to a decrease of subsidies or grants. And also we have to create complementary programs to support events and festivals that are not supported by Canadian Heritage, the category I was talking about earlier. It includes agricultural fairs and that type of event, which is not considered to be cultural and thus cannot be supported by Canadian Heritage. Thank you very much.
And MP Blakey.
Thank you very much. I know, Mr. Lee, you've said, you don't take issue with income support programs for the vulnerable. So I'm assuming you mean, people living with disabilities that aren't able to participate in the workforce, or, seniors who are on low fixed incomes that need help, supplementing their income so that they have a place to live and can feed themselves. But, when we talk about the government support programs that have been there for people in the pandemic, since September of 2020, those have had an active job search requirement as a condition of receiving the benefit. That was true for the Canada Recovery Benefit, for instance. So I am curious to know, the government effectively ended that program at the end of October with very little notice. There were 900,000 people still who were recipients of that benefit. We didn't see a corresponding alleviation of labor market trouble when that benefit was denied to many people. The Canada Worker Lockdown benefit has not been an adequate replacement. People are struggling to get it. And of course, the amount has been significantly reduced to only $300 a week from $500 a week, hardly enough to live on just wondering, it seems to me that the bigger piece, when I hear people talk about cutting off government income support, which has largely been done by the Liberals as of last fall, as a solution to the labor market shortage, what we're not talking about is training and how to prepare the people who are struggling to get into the labor market, which presumably is why they need income assistance in the first place. I don't believe there were 900,000 Canadians content to sit at home on $300 a week if they could be getting a job that would pay well and that they would find rewarding. So can you speak to the training component and what we need to actually do to get the people who are available ready for the jobs that are available? Because it seems to me that's a much bigger problem than cautious government income support programs that are hardly enough to live on. Could you speak to the training component, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Blakey. And this may surprise you, but I'm in complete agreement. And lest anyone here think that I'm saying, oh, Ian Lee, professor, wants everyone to go back to university. Shout out to Mr. Strickland and his industry. I think that I don't think we need more people at university. And I'm probably going to get attacked now by my professor colleagues, but I don't, and I'm not anti-university. I believe strongly in university.
If it's any consolation, I'm a Red Seal electrician with 2 university degrees, so I'm familiar with the phenomenon.
And my son has a Red Seal, by the way, too, in carpentry. So I'm very aware of the Red Seal program. The community colleges have done an amazing job in this country. They're one of the great unsung heroes and people that, and we should be celebrating them. Unfortunately, in the last 30 years, as you know, I think we've oversold, and guidance counselors across Canada have oversold the dream of university. And I believe strongly in university, but we don't need everybody to go to university. To your point, very quickly, yes, we do need retraining. We do need retraining, and we need a lot more targeting. We need a lot more, instead of just saying, look, we're going to put you on with income support, whether we call it social assistance or unemployment insurance. I'm not getting hung up on the labels. We need to point to people and have a better job. Governments have to do a better job, I think, of saying, look, we've got 1 million vacancies. And I don't just mean in restaurants. My own brother is a contractor, and he said his biggest problem is not taxes. He can't find workers to work for him in his business. So we have a problem.
Thank you, Mr. Lee and MP Blakey. And yeah, let's hear it for universities, colleges, and Red Seal and everybody else. So let's move on now. We're going to the Conservatives, and we have, I believe it's Mr. Chambers up for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Monsieur Martin, désolé, je ne peux pas parler.
Mr. Martin, I'm sorry, I don't speak French very well.
Are your members equipped properly, or are they prepared to reopen safely?
Oui, bon, écoutez, il y a différents débats sur la question.
Yes, well, there are different opinions, different approaches in this matter. At the beginning of the pandemic, we put in place a precautionary principle. We wanted it to be as safe as possible, but now we see that studies have been carried out. And recently, there was a study carried out by the University of Colorado and Oxford University, which determined various risks related to activities. And the activities that are presented outside, such as festivals and events, are generally considered to be low-risk activities. There's also a possibility for events and festivals, in most cases, to ask for proof of vaccination, vaccine passports. It depends on the provinces and territories. In some provinces and territories, there is an obligation of asking for a vaccine passport, which could allow us to resume our activities quickly with our business models that we had before 2020. Thank you.
So, understanding that it would be helpful to your members for money to flow, which the government has previously promised, would you say that it's more important for the industry that we, all governments, provide a very clear path towards reopening our festivals and outdoor events and getting back to normal, and that all governments need to work together to ensure a safe reopening? You just mentioned some studies that looked and made recommendations or observations that outdoor events present far less risk. So that it's actually more important to figure out a path to getting back to normal than it is to consider about future grant programs and income replacement supports for industry.
Yes. Well, it's certain that in an ideal world, we would be resume our activities at 100% level this summer, and that would decrease the pressure. It would decrease the need for compensating for loss of income through government funds, through public funds. I agree with that. But what we have to do is be able to give some kind of predictability. It's done in some places, not in other places. So in Ontario, from March 14th, we will be able to gather inside or outside without limiting any capacities. But not all jurisdictions have announced this. And I would also invite the committee members and also the public health authorities to see what's happening elsewhere in the world. We can see this in Europe and in the U.S. There are activities, festivals and events have resumed. You know that in April there would be that great festival, the Coachella Festival in California, one of the major festivals of the world, which will have many participants with very few public health measures. I'm not recommending to completely abandon public health measures, but we should look at what's happening elsewhere and rely on scientific studies that are published. Some studies have encouraged us to take precautionary measures, but other studies will also be recommending decreasing these measures.
Leave for a moment. We're spending time at the committee talking about housing. Could you talk about what policies, or more specifically, who has been hurt by existing government policies over the years in terms of finding housing, affordable housing, et cetera? And the other final question would be, we've seen some proposals that speak to the demand side of housing. So that is providing supports for people to help them find more money to bid on housing. And if that's not coupled with an increase in supply, aren't we just going to make housing affordability worse?
Just a very short answer, please.
Was that question directed to me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll be very brief. I've written several op-eds on this. I have one under review right now at the Globe and Mail on this very issue. I don't believe that support on the demand side is going to help the problem. It's throwing gasoline on the fire. We have an empirical, measurable shortage of housing in Canada.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lee.
Chief economist showed that.
Thank you. And so members and witnesses, this is going to conclude our third round and the end of our meeting today. We're going to have our final questioner will be MP Baker from the Liberals for up to 4 or 5 minutes.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. And I'm going to direct my questions to you, Ms. Koch. You, in your testimony at the outset of this meeting, you advocated for a public awareness campaign for the services that Etobicoke Services for Seniors offers, but that many agencies around the country offer. And so could you just outline for us very briefly, without going into detail, but just so that people have a sense of what those services are, could you tell us what those services are that you think people need to be more aware of?
Of course. Okay. Our services tend to be preventative, and our relationship tends to be long-term. So people start with us with health and fitness. We do falls prevention, exercise, and wellness check-in calls. As time goes on, people may not be able to exercise, so we offer them things like congregate dining, group trips to the malls, other kinds of recreational activities, which perhaps they would not be able to do without support. Then we get to the stage where people actually need adult day programming. Cognitive and physical impairment occurs. The families have real challenges looking after their loved ones and need respite. So we pick the clients up, we escort them to day programs, we keep them for the day for exercise, food, music, all kinds of activities, and then we carefully bring them home. Then the need might move forward to respite care in home. I can't dress myself. I cannot shower. I don't know when I need to take my medication. So we send PSWs in. And just to that point, every person we serve, we have an intake and assessment. So we follow how they're progressing. And as things, develop or change, we in fact recommend changes in our services. One of the most important things we do, and I don't believe this is available very many places, is we offer short-term overnight respite care in our caring center. What that means is if you've been looking after your loved one for 3 years and you've had no break, you can book them into our caring center. They get 24/7 PSW support, help with the assistance of daily living, all their meals, and just a chat. So it's actually more for the caregivers than it is for the client, but it's a safe place for them to come. Other things include transportation, and as I mentioned in my presentation, food security, which became an increasingly important challenge for us. We do friendly visiting. A lot of that's done by our volunteers who are linked with one senior, and they call them once or twice a week just to say, how are you doing? What do you need? And during the pandemic, we continued to do all our virtual programs. And our staff, if you went to our exercise program once a week, we called you once a week to see how you're doing. If you came to an adult day program 3 times a week, we called you 3 times a week. So what we really do is stay connected. We stay there to support people, to follow how they're doing, and make sure that the supports they need are provided to them. If not by us, then those who can do it, and we know the landscape.
That's great. Mr. Chair, how much time do I have left?
Well, we've just gone over our time for our meeting. If you have any final comment, but thank you, MP Baker. That was great. And Ms. Koch, thank you. I want to thank all the witnesses. You've been just excellent in terms of your remarks, your testimony, your answers to the many questions that will help inform our pre-budget consultation report. And I say that on behalf of all the members of this committee, the clerk, the staff, the interpreters. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your participation. And it's been very informative to the members and to this committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Have a wonderful day.